Welcome everybody to this virtual lunch debate at the European Parliament. To hear for live, listen with care. You will see that there are multiple options to interact. On the one hand, you can ask your questions. Please do that so we can really see your questions at the end and make sure that the questions which are most frequently asked will get a lot of attention. You do that by clicking on the Q&A button, and then you will see that you can enter your question at that moment and we can see what you have asked for. So that's already one way to interact. Feel also free to discuss in the chat. You can talk to each other, to anybody, to give comments. But if you have specific questions you want to be treated at the end in the debate, please do that in the Q&A section. The other aspect is, and maybe we can see the next slide, for those people who want to have the closed captioning. If it's in English, you can just use the closed captioning icon at the bottom of the screen, CC, live transcript. For those who want to use text on tap, you will see it in the link and in the chat. You can click on that, and then you can select the language you would like. And then you just click back on the text on tap icon, and then you will be able to see the text in your preferred language. Remember that you have to make that window smaller, and you can then put it on top of the video and this Zoom screen so you can follow it all. I hope that is clear for everybody. If you would have issues or questions, don't worry, you can put it in the chat and I'm sure that the team will help you to assist. But by doing that, I would like to really start the whole debate and the whole virtual lunch debate today. So I'm very happy that the joint associations, AIA, FO, EuroCIU, and EHEMA, together with great support from the World Health Organization, are organizing this yearly event at the European Parliament. Normally we do it live, but now it's virtual. And we're so happy that our host, MEP Saliba from Malta, is willing to host this session, and he will also start with the introduction. So here I will give the floor to MEP Saliba for his introduction. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome you all to this important conference, which is a yearly tradition that joins European Association of Hard of Hearing People, hearing aid professionals, and hearing aid manufacturers in a strong cooperation with the World Health Organization. Together, we are organizing a lunch debate in the European Parliament in Brussels in order to celebrate the World Hearing Day. This is the 7th lunch debate for the World Hearing Day from the European Parliament. And last year, we had more than 650 participants from all around the globe. I am honored to be the host MEP of this year's lunch debate. And for obvious reasons, this lunch debate this year is going to be a virtual one. And the theme is To Hear for Life. Listen with care. All the presentations are subtitled, and the debate will be supported with speech to text to ensure that this debate is accessible for all people with hearing loss. It's great to see that the European Association of Hard of Hearing People, hearing aid and cochlear implant users, hearing care professionals and manufacturers are all joining forces with the World Health Organization to inform policymakers, to inform our governments, our professionals, users, and the wider public on the importance of prevention, awareness, and the intervention for hearing loss. I would like to stress the importance of hearing for achieving a good quality of life, because a partial or inability to hear is a barrier to communication, is a barrier to language development. According to the World Hearing Organization, there are 466 million people worldwide that have a hearing loss disability, where according to a report by HearIt, 22.6 million people who have untreated hearing loss live within the EU. In turn, this is costing our union 185 billion euros a year. One of the main reasons for this cost might be that people are not encouraged to have their hearing checked on time. If only an adult hearing screening programs would be promoted the same way that prostate, that breast, or any other health screening programs are currently being promoted, then hearing rehabilitation can occur much earlier. This will increase the chance of reducing the cost, owing to the fact that people with a hearing impairment will have a better quality of life and possibly also lower unemployment rates. Various studies have shown that hearing loss disability increases the risk of social isolation, cognitive decline, dementia, and also pure mental health. Other studies have shown that untreated hearing loss can cause loneliness and can also lead to excess production of cortisol, which can increase blood pressure and also blood sugars, and can also disrupt the body's immune system, therefore possibly leading to other serious, very serious health issues. We are spending a lot of money on improving the quality of life for people with dementia, with diabetes. Why don't we invest in trying to reduce factors that can lead to this condition, the condition of hearing loss being one of them? We have amazing technology that is available to treat various types of hearing impairment, mainly hearing aids, bone conduction devices, cochlear implants, and other assistive devices. Many of these devices are being manufactured using the latest, the most innovative technology and incorporating AI algorithms to give hearing impaired people the best possible sound, even in the most difficult situations. However, it still seems that this industry is only catering for a very small percentage of the world's hearing impaired population who are actually using these devices. Is this resulting because of the costs of these devices, and unfortunately these are not accessible to the most vulnerable parts of our population? Is it because of the stigma surrounding hearing loss and the wearing of a hearing aid? Or is it just lack of public awareness? The World Health Organization estimates that by 2050, over 900 million people will have a hearing loss disability. This means that we have to take action now. Action now on ways to screen, on ways to treat as many people as possible, as the burden of on the world's economy will increase if we stay put and don't take action. Furthermore, 60% of childhood hearing loss occurs due to very preventable causes. How can we go about making sure that adequate and standardized newborn hearing screen programs are put in place with proper access to follow-up screening at, for example, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years of age, all throughout our EU member states? I firmly believe that early detection, together with early intervention, will lead to better access to education for hearing impaired children, with a reduced burden on our education systems itself, and also a better quality of life for the child and also for their parents and their families. It is important that 1.1 billion young people aged between 12 and 35 who are at risk of hearing loss due to exposure of noise in recreational settings. There is not enough awareness on these numbers and on this noise pollution. We should start looking at having health warnings similar to those that we have on cigarette packaging, or similar to those that we have when strobe lighting is used for those suffering from epilepsy. And these signs should be visible in clubs, in music events, and other festivals that have high noise levels, and ear protection will be suggested. Maybe it's the right time to enforce noise levels in recreational settings. Should there be laws protecting children from being exposed to loud sounds, especially when it's not their choice, be it in a noisy situation or being in a public place? Last but not least, I would also like to highlight that since the beginning of the pandemic, auditory health has come more and more to the foreground for our interpreters at the European Parliament. Previously, sound quality and ISO compliance of the installations were something interpreters working within the institutions could almost take for granted. With the widespread use of the remote platforms, however, the assumption is no longer true. The audio quality fed into interpreters' ears in remote meetings is unfortunately substandard, mostly due to lack of compliance with the technical recommendations by meeting participants. The professional delegation has been trying to raise awareness on the need to protect the ears of meeting participants, and more specifically of interpreters, from exposure to bad, potentially harmful sounds. However, this process is extremely slow, whereas in the meantime, our interpreters have been reporting tinnitus, hyperacusis, headaches, loss of hearing since the introduction of the remote platform. Some of them are currently not able to work in the booth. The European Parliament should lead by example, and therefore it is extremely important to raise awareness around auditory care in remote meetings in the EP and on some recent developments in the scientific field, and also in other institutions. That is why it is ultimate to support and also to promote hearing health in the best possible ways. In order to tackle this issue, we must promote professional and quality hearing that would balance care through practice, through guidance, through education, through public awareness, through advocacy, leadership, and also through research support, facilitating access to innovative technologies and also to share the best practices between our member states, between our institutions. To conclude, I would like to thank you for your kind attention, and I would like to wish all the participants a very fruitful discussion. And now I will pass the floor to the next speaker, Shelia Kada, who is responsible for the WHO's work on the prevention of deafness and hearing loss, including the advocacy on prioritization of hearing care. Shelley, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Greetings from the World Health Organization. Before I talk to you about the topic of the day, I'd like to tell you about two people who are very special to me. The first I'd like to tell you about is the daughter of a friend, Nitya. Nitya was about 17 years old. This was many, many years back, when her mother brought her to me. Her mother was very concerned because Nitya had been behaving very strangely. At times she would not respond when her parents called. The bell would ring and she would not answer the doorbell. She would not pick up the telephone at times. So her parents were concerned that either she has a really bad attitude or she has a hearing loss. And when we examined her hearing, it was clear that she had noise-induced hearing loss in both her ears. And the reason for that was listening to loud music, which Nitya had been avidly indulging in for the last few years, using her, at that time, Walkman and her headphones to do that. And the second person I met actually in Switzerland, and Michael. So Michael was a party animal, is a party animal, and he loves going to clubs, to discos, and all sorts of loud places. And so interested was he in this that he decided to take it up as a profession, and he became a DJ. Fast forward 5 years, what Michael realized was that this ringing sound, which he was earlier used to come and go, but now it was permanent. It was persistently there. It was bothering him. He had trouble falling off to sleep, and so on. When he went to a doctor, lo and behold, he had severe noise damage in both his ears. Two different people from different backgrounds, different aspirations, cultures, and yet both experiencing the same trouble, the same problem. And they are not alone. WHO estimates that over 1 billion people, mostly young people, are at risk of hearing loss due to noise and loud sounds. Loud sounds heard, they damage our ears, whether they are heard in occupational settings or they are heard in our day-to-day environment, or when we are having fun at leisure, listening to loud music or going for a loud concert. And the thing about hearing loss and also tinnitus, which occurs as a result of this prolonged noise exposure, is that it is permanent. It is permanent, but it is also completely preventable. And so, on this World Hearing Day, we are focusing, the World Health Organization is focusing on prevention of hearing loss. Hearing loss that is caused by listening to music, to other sounds in a way that is unsafe, so in recreational settings. And hence the theme, to hear for life, listen with care. Now the problem, in order to address a problem, we have to understand it, of course. And in understanding the problem, we realized that nearly 50% of young people who are listening to music over their headphones and earphones do so in a way that is not safe for their ears. At really high levels and or for prolonged periods of time, putting their hearing at risk. At the same time, over 40% of people, young people between 25 to 30 years, 12 to 35 years old, are exposed to potentially damaging sound levels in venues, in entertainment venues, and at events like concerts and all. And so, after having analyzed the problem, the magnitude, but also what are the attitudes of young people? What did they feel about this? What is the awareness level and so on? What we realized is that our approach to this prevention must be one where we intend to change listening behaviors. That is the way people are listening, the way people are consuming sounds, listening to music. That is what we need to change. And how we can change it is first by informing people, empowering them with knowledge, which is essential, which is the first step to changing listening behaviors. So informing people, what are the risks of loud sounds, why we must listen at a safe level, and how we can do so. And this, to do so, WHO focuses a lot, and we must focus a lot on raising awareness, advocating for hearing loss prevention and prevention of hearing loss through safe listening. At the same time, raising awareness alone is not enough. It's one thing to tell people, oh, well, you should strap yourself in when you're driving a car because that is safer for you. But what if their cars don't have seat belts? We need to provide them. We need to give them choices so that they can practice safe listening. It's no good telling people, well, when you're in a disco for a long time, go to a quiet place and give your ears a break for 5 to 10 minutes. If there is no quiet place there. So we need to give them safe listening choices. And for that, WHO focuses, and we must focus a lot on standards and norms. So let us talk about what WHO is doing in terms of raising awareness. So when we're talking about raising awareness, WHO works through, doing direct outreach. When I say direct outreach, putting out through our media channels, social media channels, the right information, messages, materials which people can, which can reach people and inform them about safe listening and the dangers of loud sounds. However, the reach that WHO alone has, despite its many million followers and so on, is very limited. We are talking here about billions of people that we need to reach. And hence, we also need to raise awareness through government-led and partner-led awareness campaigns. To facilitate this, WHO is launching today a handbook on how to implement a digital messaging program for safe listening. In addition, we need to work with media, traditional media, print media, audiovisual media, in order to make sure that the right information, the right techniques reach people. And for this, WHO is launched today a media brief on safe listening, so that journalists, media persons can find in one place all the relevant and correct, up-to-date facts and figures about hearing loss, about safe listening, and how to write about it, and so on. We are also going to work in the future on developing safe listening modules for children, for school children, and also for schools of music, so that people who are, children in schools can be informed about it, can have better awareness, and also music makers can be informed about it and have a better awareness for their own hearing protection as well as that of their audience members. So, working on the second aspect of prevention, that is standards and norms, WHO has developed and made available for adoption and implementation a standard, or WHO ITU Global Standard for Safe Listening Personal Audio Systems. Developed in collaboration with the International Telecommunications Agent, private sector entities, and many, many stakeholders and civil society partners, this standard includes 3 key recommendations. It recommends that any device, such as a smartphone and so on, should be able to monitor how its user is consuming sound and be able to display that information to the user in a friendly way. It should be able to offer them volume limiting options so that, empowered with knowledge, users can uptake these options and use them to protect their own hearing. At the same time, it should be able also to inform them, give them notifications, messages when they exceed their limits or when they listen for too long and so on. So give them that information so as to facilitate them to listen safely. Some commercial entities, some private sector entities have already adopted and implemented this standard, or at least parts of it. So and these are a couple of entities, and you can see what some of those interfaces look like. However, we need much stronger action from governments, from other private sector entities, so that this becomes not an exceptional or a unique feature present in some devices, but really something which is standard, which is mandated by governments, and which is there to offer the protection that it proposes to offer to people. In addition to this standard about the devices, WHO is today launching for adoption and implementation the global standard for safe listening venues and events. Now, in Europe, and since we are talking in the European Parliament, a number of countries do already have some standard for safe listening entertainment venues and events, so in their clubs and so on. But it is still not a uniform feature, even in this region. Moreover, countries also tend to have different, aspects to the standard. So WHO, having studied what was currently available and in consultation with our partners, has now developed the standard, which has 6 key features. Firstly is the limit. So limit of the maximum sound, that can be maximum average exposure. Also how it should be monitored. But very importantly is the need to optimize venue acoustics and sound systems, because it's not simply about giving the user a safe listening experience, We want people to enjoy their hearing, to enjoy the music that they love to listen to, but without putting their hearing at risk. And for a good listening experience, it is important that a venue have a good sound system in addition to safe listening features. And so optimizing this is essential, along with making available personal hearing protection, making sure that there are quiet spaces available where people can go to rest their ears, and providing people and the workers within the venue with training and information to empower them. Who can act for safe listening? Well, governments can act for safe listening by legislation, by making these standards and these norms a part of their legislative framework, or by regulation, by undertaking awareness campaigns for raising awareness on safe listening or for noise reduction. Private sector entities have a strong role to play in the form of voluntary adoption of safe listening features, including them in their devices, in their venues, and also undertaking awareness campaigns. Civil society, in the form of musicians, sound engineers, NGOs, community groups, they can help to educate people, both music makers as well as the general community. They can undertake awareness campaigns. They can do advocacy for implementation of these standards so that these standards really become the norm and not the exception. So today, on the occasion of the World Hearing Day, WHO calls upon governments, private sector entities, and civil society to promote safe listening by raising awareness and by implementing evidence-based standards for safe listening. Ladies and gentlemen, hearing loss is on the rise. The World Report on Hearing, published last year, estimated that 1 out of 5 people currently experience some level of hearing loss. This proportion is likely to increase to 1 in 4 by the year 2050. It is time for us to act. It is time for us to act to prevent hearing loss. Because to hear for life, we must listen with care. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shelley, for this great introduction. So from here, we will move to the WHO Global Standard for Safe Listening Entertainment Venues and Events. By the way, while the presentations are running, feel free to add your questions in the question and answers button so we can make sure we can continue at the rest. Now we will listen to hear more about the new standard on safe listening venues and events. Hello. First of all, welcome at the virtual lunch debate to Hear for Life, Listen with Care at the European Parliament. I'm very happy I can introduce the WHO Global Standard for Safe Listening Venues and Events. I'm in charge of the European Association of Hearing Aid Professionals and co-host of the Make Listening Safe workgroup. You have heard that Dr. Shelley Shada has introduced the global standard for safe listening venues and events in her talk, but we will go more in detail. So you will see that there are key aspects, 6 of them. The first one is limiting the sound levels, and the level has been set at 100 dBA averaged over 15 minutes. Next one is guidelines and information how to monitor those sound levels. Sound engineers do a very good job into handling this, but they need very clear and very practical information how to do this right. And then also we need to optimize the venue acoustics and the sound systems, because you need to ensure good sound quality and also a design that makes it possible to ensure safe listening in combination with experiencing wonderful sound. Number 4 is making personal hearing protection available. You will see that the levels that are set, maximum levels for venues, are too high to listen without any protection. So that is why hearing protection is essential to make listening safe. Another aspect is to make sure that quiet zones are available. We know that people like to be in quiet zones from time to time, but it has to be organized and planned, and that's why it's there. And then the sixth and last point is to provide training and information and also label venues and in different situations as safe listening venues and experiences. Now let's start with point 1 in detail. So feature 1 is the sound level limit. The level has been set to 100 dB, averaged in dBA over 15 minutes. Now we have some examples in Europe how this is already done. In Belgium, Brussels, they have also set 100 dBA, but then averaged over 60 minutes, which is a little more difficult to handle because if you need to check if the levels is correct, you would need to stay there for 60 minutes to be able to measure. And they have also set a second level, which is another weighting, which takes more care of low frequencies, that's DBC, and they also set a level that has to be under 150 dB. In Flanders, Belgium, they also measure 15 minutes average, but they took 102 dBA. In France, they also use 102 dBA, but then over 15 minutes. And in Switzerland, they have 100 dBA over 60 minutes. So you see, they come all quite close to what they are doing. Now, it's very important that WHO can set a global standard. It makes it a lot easier for a lot of countries to really introduce new regulations and make sure they can be based on the evidence of a very trustworthy source, the World Health Organization. You will see that during this presentation of the Safe Listening Venue Standard, we also will refer to a very recent but high quality publication that was published in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health, which states attitudes towards safe listening measures in entertainment venues, results from an international survey among young venue goers. And you will here see the different authors. The good thing is that you're able to access this article easily because it's open access and you find it on this link we will definitely share at the end of this presentation. Now, what did that survey do? In fact, they have had in total 2,264 individuals, so young venue goers, and you see the age between 16 and 35 years. 65% was female, and most of the participants were from the African and Western Pacific region, but they were recruited from all over the world, and they all completed this online questionnaire. Now, one of the questions was, should entertainment venues be free to decide at which level to play music, right? Should we set standards or should we give them liberty? And here you see the result. In fact, 53 of the participants at the survey stated that the entertainment venues should not be free to decide at which levels to play music. So they agree, they all say that in fact the majority says that they are in favor of making sure that we have implemented regulations. So a standard like this makes a lot of sense. The second point is how to monitor the sound levels. You will find key elements, measurement equipment and procedures, and measurement position and the use of a correction. The Audio Engineering Society has already worked on a lot of documents, and a lot of these key professionals and experts from that Audio Engineering Society have really helped to create this topic and this part of the safe listening standard. And you see right away, it's important to use the correct equipment. It's important how to set it up, how to measure it correctly. So that is very practical and very clear to help sound engineers to do this right and to make it easier for them to implement the standard correctly. Third point, venue acoustics and sound system designs. And in this topic, you will see that it's important to make sure that all the venues are really designed for sound quality and for safe listening. And there, the standard treats, of course, the key elements, the venue acoustics, room modes, acoustics of the stage area, acoustics of outdoor venues, sound system design, exclusion zones in front of loudspeakers, and management of on-stage sound. Let us give an example. You may have seen that in a huge venue that you see these very loud, big loudspeakers in front. They have huge energy, but the issue is that the people in front are exposed to a lot of very heavy and very loud sounds, while the ones at the rear get a much lower sound level. Now, for the ones in the rear, that is not nice because they don't hear enough, but for the ones in front, it's dramatic for their ears. So here it's symbolized by the eggs, and the eggs are cracking. It's a typical symbol we use a lot in Make Listening Safe. Now, how to do it right? And here you see those very specific loudspeakers that are hanging much higher, and they distribute the sound evenly over the whole area, which makes it more comfortable for the people in front. Here it's not too loud, but also a much better sound experience for the one at the rear, because they will also have a good level of sound. And you may have seen these very special loudspeakers hanging on stages to evenly distribute the sound over the whole venue, which makes a lot of sense. And then feature 4, personal hearing protection. Now, why should personal hearing protection be used? You see that in the standard, the sound level needs to be below 100 dBA, LAQ 15 minutes averaged. But if you then look at the other Make Listening Safe standards from the World Health Organization and from ITU, the weekly exposure should not exceed 80 dBA for 40 hours. So there's a mismatch of 20 dB. And that's exactly why earplugs need to help attenuate that level by about 20 dB. And you see that, and then they are at a safe level, or at least that is the maximum level at which you want people to listen. And then you are sure that this is mostly the case. Most hearing protection is doing that job. Now the question is, and the issues we see, that a lot of young people don't like using hearing protection. And you also see that in that survey. So is using earplugs interfering with the enjoyment of music? And here you see the results, and yes, indeed, 52% of the participants stated that earplugs do interfere with their enjoyment of music. So that's an issue. The other question is, do I think that earplugs are uncomfortable? And here again, you see that the majority, or at least 49%, states clearly that earplugs are uncomfortable. And that's an issue because when we are implementing standards, we want also to make it possible that we can change behavior. So that is why we have set a study at our Thomas More University College in Antwerp, the audiology department, where we measured different types of hearing protection. So on the one hand, you see here the orange line or the yellow line. That is typically the foam hearing protection you get normally free of charge at music venues. And they do attenuate very well because the higher, the more attenuation, but they attenuate a little too much at the high frequencies. The green line and the other ones we evaluated are called high fidelity earplugs. They typically use music filters, and they will make sure that they have a flat response around at the high frequencies, which makes the enjoyment of music better and typically also makes them more comfortable. And that's what you will see in the outcome of this study. So the first thing we evaluated, how about the music sound quality? What is the experience? They all had to listen with the different types of earplugs in. And you see that the yellow-orange bar is the lowest, giving the poorest rating on the sound quality, while the highest is here the green one, which is custom-made hearing protection with music filters. The ones in between, doing better than foam, they are these instant fit hearing protection systems, and most of them also have what you call high fidelity or music filters. So they make it a lot more comfortable, or at least a lot better to experience the sound quality. And in use comfort, it's about the same. So we evaluated all of that. They had to listen to their own voice, have to have those three earplugs in for a while, rate the comfort, and then you see exactly the same result. The yellow bar, right, the disposable foam hearing protection has the lowest rating, while custom made has the highest, and here instant fit high fidelity plugs are in between, so also giving a very good comfort. So that is why we do agree that foam hearing protection, disposable hearing protection, may be an issue in function of music sound quality and may be an issue in function of comfort, but that can easily be solved by using high fidelity earplugs. Now the question is, are people willing to pay for that? And that was also part of what was in the survey. I wouldn't mind having to pay for hearing protection. And then you see that we have a very positive result. Half of the participants was clearly ready to pay for hearing protection. Now that's maybe good, because if you have your own set of reusable hearing protection, you have multiple benefits. On the one hand, the benefit is that you will enjoy the music better, that you will be able to get more comfort. So the chance that you will use it more is much higher. On the other hand, it's also much more sustainable, because you have your own set, so you don't need to throw away any hearing protection, because typically the foam hearing protection is thrown away and lands in the waste. You can use your own set of instant fit or custom-made hearing protection for multiple years in a row, and you always have them at hand. So why not do a good thing cause for the environment, right? Make it sustainable and have your own set of hearing protection available. Please consult your hearing care professional to get the best guideline, or get them in a quality provider of hearing protection. And then quiet zones. That's kind of a new idea, because we didn't see that in many local regulations, but it seems to make a lot of sense. So quiet zones can help you a lot. Here you see a graph showing the time spent in a quiet zone, which typically needs to be, of course, significantly softer, lower level than 80, preferably 70 dB A level, which is comfortable to use. And you see the more time you spend in such a quiet zone, the lower, of course, your relative sound dose will be, which is not so surprising. That's also the result and the outcome of this evaluation. So in turn, this can result in a reduced risk of hearing injury when you have quiet zones available. So would the participants at the study like to have them? So here it states, I would appreciate having a place within the entertainment venue where I can rest my ears. And yes, for sure, 82% of all participants really would like to have a place within the entertainment venue where they can rest their ears. It's appreciated, and a lot of people, the vast majority, really wants to have that. Or having the question put somewhat differently, I do not see the need of having a quiet zone in an entertainment venue. That's kind of a comparable question, right? And here you see that 78% states, no, in fact, we do see a need to have a quiet zone in an entertainment venue. So here they disagree with the statement, so it means that they really agree that they want to have a safe zone available in entertainment venues. So that is why it's so important to have that implemented in the standard, to make sure that this is foreseen. And you will see in the standard there are multiple options how to implement it right and how to make that possible, because we know it's not always easy, but there are multiple options to come close to this objective. And then the last point is the last feature is the provision of training and information. And of course, that is a key role. Fortunately, there is already a lot of information available from WHO. So there is a lot of information available for training. We have packages of good guidelines on how to listen safe. So training needs to be done for the people working in the venue, but also, of course, training people and the audiences how to use their hearing protection correctly, how to use the safe zones correctly. And also, you may have a label stating that you have a safe listening event. This is an example from Brussels. I think it's the Brussels Environmental Ministry that has created these different labels where people state what is the level that they will make sure to provide, how safe is the environment, and if it's in the red zone, they will automatically provide hearing protection to be sure that you can listen in a safe way. Now we're very happy that all this material is available, but of course there need to be different actions. So on the one hand, we have the Make Listening Safe technical group at the World Health Organization that has been working very hard to create guidelines and standards and to create quality material and make a lot of publications. We also have the World Hearing Forum, where we have the Make Listening Safe work group. So the Make Listening Safe work group is a promotion group. They make sure that the material isn't only there, but is also brought out, distributed, communicated as far and as widely as possible at conferences, at World Hearing Day, at other aspects, doing that. And we have also created a Make Listening Safe LinkedIn group, so please come and join that group where we see the latest information, latest discussions with expert and interested groups. Feel free to join us and come and see us at LinkedIn so we can keep informing you in the best possible way. So thank you for listening to the WHO Global Standard for Safe Listening Venues and Events. So this part was all about prevention and make listening safe. You will hear now from Hard of Hearing Associations, EuroCIU, how they have really used and have helped us to promote safe listening and made sure that this is communicated towards their groups, to their peers, but also to students, to young people, to young ambassadors. You will hear more about that in the next talks. After that, you will also hear much more about awareness. There is a very good guideline from the World Health Organization that hearing screening needs to be implemented for adults globally. And it's important to start doing that from the moment you are 50 years and older. So that is also something that needs to be created. And then you will also hear in the vast presentation from WHO Europe, what about intervention? The need of hearing care, why hearing care is such an evidence-based and economic intervention, cost effectiveness is great, so how to do that all. If you want to read more, please visit the AIA website where we have an action plan and we have more information on safe listening. Thank you for your attention. So now we move on to the experiences and the ideas of hard of hearing associations. And the first person I want to introduce is Lydia Best. She's the president of the European Federation of Hard of Hearing People, which is also very active within the Make Listening Safe work group and actively working as well in the ITU, the International Telecommunications Union, helping us to develop good standards for safe listening. Lydia, we're very interested to hear more from you. You have the floor.
Hello. I welcome the opportunity to speak at the lunch debate on the occasion of the World Hearing Day. My name is Lydia Best, and I am the president of the European Federation of Hard of Hearing People. Our vision in Europe is where hard of hearing people can live without barriers and participate at all levels of society. And the focus is on making sure that hearing loss does not stop individuals from living their lives fully. Then there is a question. If this is our focus, why are we involved in Make Listening Safe initiative, as an example? Well, to quote Helen Keller, blindness separates us from things. Deafness separates us from people. She lived in the times where, of course, access to hearing technology and support has not been great at all. However, her words do ring true, because our members use hearing aids and cochlear implants to a great extent, and those devices are life-changing for many people and life-enhancing. However, they are unable to replace natural hearing abilities we used to have and remember. For this, we understand very well what hearing loss means to an individual in daily life. And to bring you a little bit more of context to this, I would like to bring up a survey and report which has been done in 2011 by our French member, Bucodes, where they had more than 2,500 people responding to it. And among many different questions, one was especially standing out from our point of view, which was, could you please describe what was the most traumatic experience in your life? And they had a choice of 4. Losing the job, being in serious incident, accident, death of close relative or friend, losing hearing. More than 3/4 of the respondents have put losing hearing ability as the biggest trauma from their own experiences. And even interestingly enough, 40% of the respondents who had mild to moderate hearing loss also put hearing loss as #1 trauma. This indicates how individuals feel and respond to actual hearing loss. In addition to this, there are many individuals, especially as we know from the unsafe practices to listening to the very loud music for a long time. We know already from the research that many people experience and develop tinnitus, which is also limiting the quality of life for many, many people. And for this reason, hard of hearing associations are not only focused on supporting people who already have a hearing loss, but also try to educate others that while in some areas, in some cases, they have absolutely no control over the situation they find themselves in terms of hearing loss itself, but our unsafe practices and habits, such as listening to a very long time, for a very long time to the music, as well as just exposing ourselves to a very loud events such as concert, etc., means that actually we are in control of that kind of situation and we can do something about it. So our message to you all, yes, you can live your life fully, even as a person with hearing loss, but there are additional issues which we all know and encounter. So please protect your hearing, especially where it is actually in your hands. Thank you, and I wish you all a very good event. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia, for this very encouraging and personal story and appreciation. It's clear that people with hearing loss really want to make sure that people take care about their hearing. And that is why I'm very happy to introduce Laia Zamora. She is part of the Spanish Association of Cochlear Implant Users, but also very dynamic within EuroCIU. And to be fair, she also has been very dynamic from the beginning in the Make Listening Safe work group in our work at WHO. Laia has been doing a lot of very good work on getting ambassadors, young ambassadors, to promote safe listening. She started to do this live, but during these virtual times, she has also created great work on her websites, and you will see that she has good dynamics, but also a very good sense of humor to make this fun. So please enjoy Laya's presentation and her information about what they are doing on this activity.
Good morning. I'm Laia Zamora, the Director of Youth of the Federación AICE, the Spanish Federation of Cochlear Implant Users. Federación AICE is a member of EuroCIU, the European Association of Cochlear Implant Users, along with more than 30 national and regional member associations from 23 countries. EuroCIU represents cochlear implant users in Europe and lobbies for the European Parliament to better understand the perspective and needs of the people with hearing loss. Young cochlear implant users typically use speech, attend ordinary schools, and are part of hearing society. Older people who become deaf as adults are able to continue speaking and participating in hearing society after they have received cochlear implants.
Ik wil horen. Kun jij mij horen?
The title of the presentation today, World Hearing Day, March 3rd, 2022, is the Student Safe Listening Project. Currently, thanks to a grant from the Spanish Minister of the 2030 Agenda, we are carrying out an educational project on the prevention of hearing loss. You might be wondering, why would a cochlear implant organization carry out this awareness program for students with normal hearing instead of working directly with deaf students? Well, for this, we should go back to the first time that the World Health Organization began to celebrate World Hearing Day, and the messages that began to indicate that hearing loss was being aggravated, especially by unsafe listening practices among young people. According to World Health Organization, 466 million people worldwide suffer from hearing loss, including 34 million children. Furthermore, it is estimated that by 2050, more than 900 million people, that's it, 1 on 10, will suffer hearing loss in the near future. According to the World Health Organization, 60% of these cases, especially in youth, could be prevented by incorporating healthier and preventive practices into daily life. The World Health Organization alerts us that the normalization of exposure to harmful noise as a form of leisure, not only in music festivals, where the overexposure to high volumes for long hours, but also for the new form of virtual leisure, such as video games, is it becoming more common to use headsets to communicate with players with the sound of the game when the sound of the game communicates to emit. We must also consider the increase in the use of mobile phones and headphones, which are frequently used with excessive volume and for longer durations than recommended. This leads to an exponential problem in hearing damage among young people. World Health Organization figures scared us and show us that we need to contribute to the improvement of knowledge about hearing health care. We started with some press releases, but this had little impact on the youth. Subsequently, an opportunity arose to visit schools where some students have cochlear implants to explain about cochlear implants and hearing loss to all pupils. Around the same time, Federación AICE, with another project financed by the Spanish Minister of Social Welfare, carried out a study on bullying among students with cochlear implants. The results were heartbreaking. School bullying and cyberbullying attacks on deaf students occur between 2 and 3 times more often than students without hearing problems. EuroCIU is trying to compare these numbers between countries, but in any case, these figures show that bullying is an even bigger scourge among our teens. Without this background, we believe that the best way to make the problem visible would be through education itself, going to schools and talking about it. Even if some of the kind of bullying is physical, is far more common, the psychological bullying, harder to prove, and probably more destructive in the long term. We need to change the mentalities of society, especially in schools where there are other kids with disabilities, to show that all of them can or will probably have some kind, and at some point in their lives, have some kind of disability, and they need to try to prevent it as much as possible by being healthy, but at the same time to try to be more understanding and not discriminate or bully anyone who is different from them, demonstrating that deafness is like, and also suggesting how students can help their deaf peers in practice. We must start by educating the youngest members of our society. They need to be made aware of the problem of ambient noise in our daily environments, what factors they can influence, and how they can raise awareness in their own networks and environments, and how harmful noise pollution can be. We also talk about what to do when they suspect that they might have a hearing problem, and we introduce them to people with hearing impairments to bring the subject closer to home. This action is very gratifying for participants because they realize that their strategic roles bears real fruit in the short term and even generates a domino effect that possibly affects society in general becoming aware of the problems. We realized that it was necessary to carry out the talks in a dynamic and fun way, to keep the students' attention and to help messages really sink in, so that it went beyond an educational talk but a rather a lifelong learning. We started with a small step. We talked about noise, hearing loss, and cochlear implants, but at the end they were invested as they were knights in an order which they have to fight against noise and hearing loss, so they themselves can distribute the message among their communities. Being knights and giving them a mission was carried out and remembered, which was really the point. They were given this tax like they were having a stamp of approval. In the following World Hearing meetings, we talk about the idea of investing the young people as messengers, and this evolved in the term of young safe listening ambassadors, with the goal of training teens to be advocates of caring for hearing health. Nowadays, we dress up as crazy scientists, even putting some fancy and really funny things, so they can remember the visit of the sound professors. One of our presenters is also deaf, and in the middle of the talk, she takes off her wig to reveal her cochlear implant, which usually leaves the students really stunned. Many believe that hearing loss is only for grandparents and not for the young, and don't just believe that it cannot happen to them, or it will only happen when they are really old. This project also carries out unofficially pre-audiometric test, formerly used an EMP3 files, and now with the World Hearing Organization application Hearing Who for students and teachers. Some realize that they have problems when they have poor results, and it's our job to explain next steps to figure it out. We aim to offer a service that can detect and address cases of hearing loss that otherwise affected cognitive ability, attention span, and finally, school performance. Lives are improved by addressing hearing loss early. Sometimes, as a byproduct of our presentations, we even detect cases of dyslexia or other problems not related to hearing. At the end, a report is delivered to the schools with the results, indicating possible instances of hearing loss. This is all done from a participatory, dynamic, and reflective perspective. kids, like adults, find it hard to understand the concept of decibels. Kids sometimes believe that 30 decibels is really old, while others think that a bursting balloon can reach a sound level of 1,000 decibels. It is a measure that students clearly find hard to grasp, but we hope that after playing games with a sound level meter, they will better recognize the types of noise, volumes, and exposures which could be harmful. In addition, we recommend schools for all ages groups carry out parallel activities, write essays on the subject, drawings, posters, videos, and even download sound level meters application on the students' mobile phones and carry out tests at home with everyday noises such as the cooker hood, the television, or the toilet flushing. These funny noises encourage students to do extra activities. Due to the current social situation caused by COVID, this project had to innovate. We created an exclusive web page for the laboratory in Sonoro to be able to do the activities online. The web page includes the workshop content and even integrates the application for the World Hearing Organization. Is it offered to schools that they needed, all of them, as the project itself, free of charge. The online format allows us to reach greater numbers of participating centers and students, especially in rural zones, increasing the impact of the project. This year, in addition to reach more schools and participating students, we are also offering courses to teachers to help them communicate with people with hearing loss. The obligation of social distance and use of masks in some countries had created really difficulties of the communications with students with hearing loss. We provide teachers with the tools to alleviate these problems. We also offer basic courses on communication accessibility through context subtitle, captioning, and subtitling on YouTube and similar platforms. Since only 11% had undergone hearing tests through their lives to find out the state of their hearing health. On the contrary, more than 68% of the students surveyed considered it very important to undergo tests to monitor their hearing health, especially as they got older. Furthermore, other actions are presented, like community masks, have been distributed among educational professionals to facilitate easier lip reading and therefore improve the communication with students with hearing problems. As you can see, this whole project has diverse and well-defined objectives, and thanks to the grants from the government, it's offered, as I said, free of charge, raising awareness of hearing loss, increasing visibility of people with hearing cochlear implants, teaching them about implants, but as well about accessibility communications such as captioning, community mask, and other kinds of FM devices and loops. We also become more known as an NGO so that in the future students and families in need of care will know where to look for information. Finally, I just want to mention that EuroCIU is working together with the European Disability Forum, EDF. Disability must be included and taken into account in all kinds of directives, laws and legislations, from health care to education, culture, employment, social affairs, security, aging, transport, tourism, trade, everything, even economic initiatives or human and women's rights. We are citizens from Europe and we should have the same rights as hearing persons. The health situation is causing longer waiting lists for cochlear implant surgeries, delay in professional renewals due to lack of resources. In some other places, rehabilitation services which allow users to get the most out of their devices are being closed. Communication is what connects us to the world. Undressed hearing loss causes isolation and depression and accelerates cognitive decline, dementia, in later life, requiring additional public sector spending in the long term. Faced with the greatest problems we have, we must remember that investing in hearing is investing in people's quality of life. We must continue to advance to claim our position in society with equal opportunities. Nothing and no one will prevent us from communicating. Happy World Hearing Day!
Good hearing
and communication
are important at all stages of life.
Enjoy your music. Safe listening. World Hearing Day.
Thank you, Laia, for this very dynamic and enthusiastic part. And I think she's been very convincing that associations for people with hard of hearing people, hearing aid users, cochlear implant users are dynamic and really want to contribute. And to make sure that, you know that Laia could talk for weeks about all the projects she's running, so we're very happy about that. And to make sure it's not lost, in fact, the World Health Organization is setting up a whole database and a whole concept to make sure that all these practical experiences can be exchanged. I can also tell you that within the world, within the Make Listening Safe workgroup, Laia and also Teresa Amat are driving this project to inform teams how they can work on school programs, actions as they are doing. So the learning curves they have made through and the great ideas they have can be shared with all of you. So if you are interested to contribute to this, to work on this, or to learn more, come and join us at the Make Listening Safe workgroup and at the World Hearing Forum. But next, let's talk about something else. Because one thing is the fact that we have to prevent. The other aspect is that when there is an issue, people need to be aware of it. And to create awareness, hearing screening is a great tool. So I'm very happy that one of my neighbors, by the way, Patrick Daze, an audiologist, he's the president of HearIt, is willing to explain more about why it's so important to screen adult hearing. The floor is yours, Patrick.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Patrick Daze, and I'm the chairman of HearIt AISBL. And it is my pleasure to present to you today during this virtual lunch debate about the importance of adult hearing screening today, March the 3rd, 2022. Now, what is a challenge to society? If you look at this data from the World Report on Hearing published in 2021, and we look at the prevalence of hearing loss, then I would like to draw your attention to the bottom line indicated in black. Now, what you see there is the prevalence of moderate and higher grade of hearing loss going from 2019 to 2050. And what you see that is that in 2019, there were 430 million people having a moderate or higher grade of hearing loss. Now, this will evolve to 711 million people by 2050. Now, when we consider adults and we consider specifically that age group, then I would like to draw your attention on this slide to the third data set, the European region. And what you see there is that when you look at the age group between 60 and 69, then you see roughly 10% of the people have a moderate or higher grade of hearing loss. If we move to the next decade from 70 to 79, you see that 23.4% has hearing loss. The age between 80 and 89, it adds up already to 42%. And then the oldest age category, 90 plus, you see that 56.5% have a moderate or higher grade hearing loss already in the European region. Now, it is not just about the hearing loss we need to talk. Linked to the hearing loss are also comorbidities. And there's multiple of them. Some of them are listed here. I think the top one is definitely cognitive decline or dementia, but others are mental health problems, social isolation and withdrawal, reduced quality of life, fatigue both during and after work, less physical activity, and a higher incidence of falls. Now, what is the impact of hearing loss and the comorbidities on the cost to society? So what is the impact there? Now, if we look across the EU, the cost of unemployment, reduced productivity, and early retirement due to untreated hearing loss adds up to 185 billion euros per year. Yes, you hear it well, 185 billion per year. So this is 17 billion more than the EU budget in 2020. Now, when non-medical expenses and medical costs for other comorbidities are included, the true cost of hearing loss is estimated to be around 213 billion euros. Now, if we compare this to a cost which everybody knows, like linked to dementia, then dementia will cost on an annual basis around 250 billion by 2030. So you see that even with hearing loss, we are not that far away from the total cost linked to dementia, for example. Now, considering all of that, something needs to be done. So what are the solutions to the problem? Clearly, there are two types of solution. On the one hand, there are the hearing aids. So you see on the left-hand side of your slide, different types of hearing aids themselves, going from a very small hearing aid, which is called invisible in the canal, up to the superpower behind the ear hearing aid. Now, if hearing aids are of no benefit anymore, or don't provide enough benefit, then people obviously can always opt for a cochlear implant. And this is used in cases of severe to profound sensory neural hearing loss. Now, a good question is how many EU citizens, and then more specifically adults, use hearing aids and cochlear implants? If you look at Eurotrack data coming from 2009 up to 2012, 15, and then 2018, and we look into a set of countries, then what we can see if we look into hearing aid adoption, that it increases over time. If we look at the overall group, we end up with an adoption rate of 41.6% in total in 2018. However, I think it is important to consider the different age groups also there. We see for the different age groups marked on the right-hand side of the slide, you see that there's a positive evolution and a positive increase of the adoption rate. However, looking at the data from 2018, you see that the adoption rate in the people aged 44 maximum is 35%, so 1 out of 3. The age group between 45 and 64, we come to a number of 31%, so less than 1 out of 3. And the 65 plus age group has an adoption rate of 49.5%. So even in the best case scenario, in all these age groups, the adoption rate is only 1 out of 2. So only 1 out of 2 people who need a hearing aid are using them. Now, the good news is that the more severe the hearing loss, the higher the adoption rate. So if you go from left to right here on the bars, you see that the red indicates no hearing aid and the blue indicates a hearing aid. You see that for the low levels of hearing loss, you see that 83% of the people eligible for a hearing aid are not wearing one, where if you go for the high levels of hearing loss, 74% would have a solution linked to their hearing loss, might be hearing aid, might be a cochlear implant, for example. Now, if we just look at the category of cochlear implants, do we see any difference? So how many adults of all eligible candidates really use cochlear implants? In the table below, you see also the uptake rate for what is called high-income countries. So in the left column, you see the countries mentioned, so varying from Australia, Belgium, Germany, Japan, and so on up to USA. And in the middle column, or the column in the middle, you see the percentage of the uptake rate. Now, best case scenario is Germany, where you have an uptake rate of around 10%, as presented by Professor Müller from Munich in 2019 at one of the major conferences. In all other high-income countries listed here, the uptake rate is below 10%. So less than 1 out of 10 is using a cochlear implant or is having a cochlear implant, where 10 out of 10 would have a potential benefit out of it. So clearly a lot needs to be done there. Now, the question is, why is the uptake rate or the adoption rate so low in hearing aids and cochlear implants? There are several potential causes for that. On the one hand, there's the lack of awareness amongst referring professionals about hearing aids, cochlear implants, the indications, outcomes, and the hearing journey. But there's also the lack of awareness amongst patients or candidates who are eligible for a hearing aid or cochlear implant. Next, there's also the fact that there's no national screening in place, hearing screening in place in any EU member states in adults. Following that, we also have some reasons linked to the personality and the person itself more, like stigma, for example, the fear of surgery in case of a cochlear implant, or other reasons like lack of adequate funding, lack of access, or lack of resources. Now, the reasons mentioned at the bottom are not the case in economically advanced European countries, but one must admit that differences also exist there amongst the different member states within the EU. Now, let's tackle the national hearing screening programs in adults. I mean, if we look into the recommendations of the World Health Organization for adult hearing screening, what are they? In 2021, there was a World Report on Hearing published by the World Health Organization. And there they came up with a set of measures with an acronym called HEARING. And the first H of the word hearing stands for hearing screening and intervention. And you see the other components of the word hearing listed there. But let's just focus on hearing screening for this virtual lunch debate today. Now, what is suggested there? So all older people should be screened with the aim of identifying at the earliest possible stage those with hearing loss who could benefit from the use of hearing technology or from non-technological interventions such as education, counseling, and communication training. Now, when should we do this screening? When should we start with it, and how often should we do it? All adults from the age of 50 years onwards should be screened on a regular basis for hearing loss. Screening may be conducted at 5-year intervals until the age of 64. Then onwards from the age of 65, the frequency of screening should be increased to every 1 to 3 years. Wherever possible also, it would be good to link hearing screening schedules to other health checks, like different cancer checks or whatsoever. Now, how is it set up? If we look into the screening itself, the first step would be really using day-to-day live simple questions. So you see there's 3 parts to it. So if you look into section A, it's just yes and no questions. So for example, do you have a hearing problem now? Do you have a diagnosed hearing loss? Or do you use hearing aids? The next set of questions you see marked under section B, the skilled questions. So how would you characterize your hearing, for example? And then finally, section C indicates that we can use an existing screening questionnaire like the hearing handicap inventory for the elderly. Now, once that's done, we can go to step 2 of the screening test. And that is really a more objective test, let's say. where we can, on the one hand, use the detection of pure tones in both ears at a fixed decibel level. We can do the digit triplet in noise test, and determine the air conduction thresholds through pure tone threshold screening, or we can do the whispered voice test. Now, if based on the screening, a refer result will be present after wax removal, of course, if this was indicated, then a diagnostic hearing assessment should be done to confirm the hearing loss and establish the degree and the nature of it. So what is then the minimum set of testing which needs to be done? On the one hand, it's the pure tone audiometry, where PTA is then calculated, and that's done based on bone conduction measurement. We would do tympanometry for middle ear assessment, and wherever it's feasible, we would also do speech audiometry. Now, based on that, we define the type of hearing loss and the degree of hearing loss, and then we would come with an intervention. And that intervention must include a basic education and counseling on hearing loss for people with hearing loss, but also for the caregivers and families to facilitate psychological acceptance and adjustment. This should also include communication, training, and adaptations in social and physical environments and peer mentoring. In addition to that, I think the need for and the type of hearing technology should be assessed, and whichever technology is required. That could be hearing aids, cochlear implants, or other hearing implants, or hearing assistive technologies should be provided and fitted by a trained professional who is authorized to do so. So, coming to the end of this presentation, what needs to change? In summary, I could say that hearing loss must be addressed as a public health issue. In addition, there is a need for policymakers to allocate resources for and plan strategically to promote access to ear and hearing care. In addition, public health strategies should address prevention, screening, and early intervention of hearing loss. And I think that is one of the key messages I want to pass on today during this virtual lunch debate, definitely. I think we really need to tackle the public health strategies and make sure that things like adult hearing screening get implemented on a nationwide level in the different member states of the EU. With that, I would like to thank you definitely for your attention. I look forward to the Q&A session, and if you have further questions or if you want to have more input, don't hesitate to look at one of the websites mentioned on this slide, or feel free to contact me through one of the channels. With that, I would like to wish you a very nice continuation of the webinar, and as said, looking forward to the Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Patrick. And just to be clear, I think that adult hearing screening is not happening at all in any country in Europe, and I don't think there's many countries in the world where this is happening right now. It's a very strong commitment of WHO and a very strong guideline. They have created a great handbook on how to conduct screening, pediatric screening, school screening, but also adult screening, and how to do it right. We will ensure you have the links to this. Now, talking about WHO, we're very happy that Satish Mishra, who is the regional advisor on disability rehabilitation and many other things in the WHO European office, was willing to present us and talk about the importance of access to ear and hearing care in Europe. Please welcome Satish, and we're very eager to hear more about the WHO European office on this point. The floor is yours.
Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. It's my huge pleasure to join all of you in this lunch debate at the European Parliament. And the theme of the debate is to focus on to hear for life and listen with care. My name is Satish. I'm the Regional Advisor on Disability Rehabilitation And as well as I follow the agenda on palliative care and long-term care for the WHO Regional Office for Europe, which is based in Copenhagen in Denmark. I'll be speaking today about hearing care in Europe, the current status and the future directions on hearing care in the WHO region. To start with the numbers, we estimate today in WHO European region, 196 million people in the region live with hearing loss. We estimate that this number will increase to 236 million people with problems of hearing care by 2050. This clearly indicates that hearing loss is on the rise. If we talk about the disabling hearing loss, in Europe, 57 million people require hearing rehabilitation. And this need is likely to rise over 71 million people by 2050. Most people with hearing loss do not have access to the interventions they need. The gap in services is huge. If you take one single tracer indicator on the need of hearing aids and their actual use by those in need, we find that there's a gap of 77%, of over 77% in the European region. This is despite the fact that country in the European region, WHO European region, there's highest concentration of human resource compared to other WHO European regions. In spite of that fact, we see that 67% of the countries in the European region has only more than 50 specialists per 1 million population. Unaddressed hearing loss has a wide range of impact on those affected, their families, and society at large. It affects listening and poses challenges for everyday communication. In children especially, it hampers development of language and speech. It is associated with delayed cognitive development in children, as well as cognitive decline in adults. It impedes their educational attainment and makes it difficult for people to find and retain jobs. Hearing loss often causes social isolation and is a cause of relationship disharmony, leading to feeling of loneliness, low self-esteem, depression, and dementia. If you talk in economical terms, at a year in hearing care services comes at a very high cost at a societal level. We estimate that annually 225 billion US dollars are lost, mainly due to loss of productivity and social isolation attributed to unaddressed hearing loss in the European region. At a global level, this cost is 980 billion US dollars are lost due to loss of productivity and social isolation. Whereas in the European region, is 225 billion US dollars. The fact, and this is the good news, that it is possible to have good hearing across the life course. Solutions are available that can prevent and address hearing loss so that all people have the chance to achieve their full potential. This requires strong and coordinated public health action that includes measures for prevention of hearing loss at a population level, ensure early identification of hearing loss at all ages, and provide timely and appropriate care for all those in need. In the next few slides, I'll expand more on these solutions. In terms of prevention, solutions are available to prevent many causes that lead to hearing loss. In children, for instance, 60% of hearing loss is attributed to preventable causes such as rubella, low birth weight, birth complications, etc. All of which can be prevented through public health measures. Later in life, also protecting ears from loud sounds, avoidance of ototoxic medicines and chemicals, as well as healthy lifestyle choices can prevent the occurrence or progression of hearing loss. When hearing loss occurs, it is important to identify it at the earliest possible in order to have successful outcomes. This can be done through systematic screening of newborns, preschool and school-going children, adults in high-risk occupations, as well as in older adults. Moreover, it is possible to identify hearing loss at all stages of the life, from the birth till the old age, and in all settings, whether in community or in school settings or in work settings. Innovative and automated hearing testing has made it possible to reach everyone and everywhere. Such efforts, when supported by telemedicine, can ensure quality of care for all. Once hearing loss is identified, it can be effectively addressed through a holistic approach that includes provision of hearing technology such as hearing aids and implants, along with supportive rehabilitation therapy. In addition, people can also benefit through the use of sign language as well as lip reading. Despite the fact that solutions are available to prevent and address hearing loss, the field of ear and hearing care faces many challenges. On one hand, there is a steadily growing number of people in need of ear and hearing care, driven by the demographic shifts. On the other hand, the health system do not have the capacity to provide ear and hearing care services, mainly due to lack of human resources, lack of policies, finances, as well as devices and equipment. In addition, at the level of the community and among the policymakers and even healthcare professionals, there is a persistent lack of awareness about hearing loss. These problems are further magnified by the stigma linked with ear and hearing problem. That is a key challenge that we need to address in this field. The good news is that these challenges can be addressed, and as the World Report on Hearing shows, there are numerous examples which have been implemented at the country level through innovative and evidence-based strategies. To address the challenges faced and move to a path of universal health coverage, where everyone can access ear and hearing care without financial hardship, countries need to adopt an integrated people-centered approach to ear and hearing care, which can be implemented through a standard health system so that all people can have equal access to quality of care. The World Report on Hearing outlines the vision on integrated people-centered ear and hearing care, which is detailed through an acronym, hearing interventions, and delivered through a standard health system. I'll speak about them in a moment. The World Report on Hearing proposes a package of evidence-based intervention, acronymized as Hearing Package of Intervention. These range from hearing screening and intervention. Number 2, ear disease prevention and management. Number 3, access to technology. Number 4, rehabilitation services. Number 5, improved communication. Number 6, noise reduction. Number 7, greater community engagement. Countries should determine which intervention best suit their needs by conducting an evidence-based consultative prioritization exercise. Ensuring access to prioritized interventions and services require action at all levels of the health system. This includes policy development, building human resource capacity through education and training, task sharing, standardized guidance and practices for procuring health hearing technologies, ensuring financial and social protection, as well as setting targets and indicators for ear and hearing care. Investing in integrated, people-centered ear and hearing care is important because it is both essential for good functioning for those who are at risk or living with ear and hearing problems. It is also cost-effective. The World Report on Hearing estimates that an additional annual investment of less than $1.4 per annum can benefit 1.4 billion people over 10 years, averting 130 million disability-adjusted life years and bring return of $16 for every dollar invested on ear and hearing care. With these considerations, the World Report on Hearing presents a call for action, calling upon WHO member states and countries to scale up ear and hearing care for achieving global targets of 20% relative increase in ear and hearing care by 2030. We need to act now for ear and hearing care because there's a growing number of people with unaddressed hearing loss and ear disease is simply unacceptable. Hence, urgent action is needed to prevent and address hearing loss across the life course. This can be done by investing in a cost-effective interventions, which will, on one hand, benefit people with hearing loss, and on the other hand, will bring financial gains to the society. Countries must act now to integrate people-centered ear and hearing care within the national health plans for universal health coverage. For the cost of doing nothing is one we cannot afford. I thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you all a continuation of this debate. My colleague, Shaili Chadha, will be available to respond to any of the questions and queries which you may have with regards to ear and hearing care in the European region. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Satish, for this very great overview and really your dynamics to propose that people have to act now and we need to make ear and hearing care accessible. Now I would like to invite all the other speakers that are present right now to activate their microphone and their video camera so we can see them all. And then we can go for the debate. Just wait until everybody's here. Super. And then I had a look in the questions and answers, and there's one question that came appearing back in a few different ways. And I would think it's maybe best directed to Shaili Chadha from WHO, because the question is that noise-induced hearing loss is not only dependent on the sound level, it states. It is most likely also very dependent on the length of exposure and on the frequencies where you're exposed to. And let me link that to a second question that is quite in the same direction. it is stating that, in fact, the question is it so that listening for a very long time to compressed sound at a reasonable high level is maybe as harmful as listening to extremely loud sounds? So I think it's fully into your package, Shelley. So please, if you could answer that, we would really love to hear your response on that one.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you to those who have posed this very pertinent question. And we completely agree. It is not simply about the decibel level, though at some point the decibel levels can become so harmful as to be instantaneously harmful. But overall, it is really about a trade-off between the decibel level, the volume, and the time you spend listening. And this is one thing which is very strongly embodied in the Make Listening Safe initiative, that ultimately it is a user's perspective or an individual's choice, how they want to listen. But what we need to give them is to give them this information. The louder they listen, the shorter they have to listen. And it's not just enough to tell them that. We need to also provide that information, how short, how long. And that is why the WHO ITU Global Standard for Safe Listening Devices, it doesn't focus simply on putting limits to the maximum output that you can have. It focuses really on providing users with that information that you have listened over the week to this much average sound level for this much time. And so what is the sound dose or the sound allowance that you have actually consumed? So that is what this standard is about. And that is what the basic principle of safe listening is about. When we come to venues, of course, it is, again, we looked at the survey that Mark so kindly shared. That was one of the surveys which really guided us to understand how much time people actually spend at these venues, how frequently they go to these venues. Because obviously, if you are going there every day and spending 4 hours in a venue, then certainly 100 decibel or even 90 decibel exposure is going to be too high. But we looked at the average or what the majority is doing and structured also the limit according to that time period. So I would say that this issue is certainly very, very central to the Make Listening Safe initiative, to WHO's standards. And I'll be happy for anybody else also to comment on it. And this actually ties in very well also with the compression part, because there is, as you have rightly pointed out, an increasing body of evidence which shows clearly that when we compress sound, what we are doing is, in terms of the ear, actually delivering more energy per time. So you're delivering more energy per second. You may clip off the peaks, but actually deliver higher intensity per second. You lose also the silences in between the sounds, which is the characteristic of music, really. So there is this increasing body of evidence, and it is also the reason why the standard that we were talking about, the WHO ITU standard for devices, stays away from fixing a very hard top limit that no sound above 100 decibel. What we're talking about is average sound. Of course, they cannot be sound levels like 140 decibels or 130 decibels, which would instantaneously damage a ear. But potentially we keep away from fixing, but not potentially, but actually we keep away in that standard from fixing a top level. What we talk about is the average level. So the average level that the user listens to is what we are concerned about, and the time for which they're listening to that sound. So that is, I hope I've answered that question, but if there is a counter question, I will be happy to address it when the term comes. Thank you, Mark, and you're welcome to add to it.
Super. Well, I will not add to it because I fully agree with everything you said, and I think it makes a lot of sense. The beginning of the first question also pointed to, shouldn't we be careful that when always talking about safe listening, we don't have the result that people start to be scared of any kind of sound? Or shouldn't we be careful that in communication, we kind of kill enjoying great sound and good sound experiences? What is your view on that, on communication, Shelley?
So first of all, I absolutely agree with you, and I keep saying this in every platform, that the Make Listening Safe initiative is not about being against sound or against music or against having fun. It's really about keeping our hearing and using it. Hearing is meant to be used for listening to the sounds we love to listen to, and we want to keep doing that. So for sure, if wherever our message is interpreted as, oh, you're telling us not to listen or not to enjoy sounds, we welcome also that feedback if that is the interpretation from any message. And we are happy to also rework on that communication to make sure that we do not convey that kind of a message or that impression that any sound can harm you. Sounds are really, they are integral to our life. It's how we communicate. It's how we feel also. Sounds evoke emotions. Many sounds also. Music is therapy. They release endorphins in our brain. So we have nothing against sounds. We love them, and that's why we love our ears.
Super. Maybe I also can play that question to Laya, because with your activities, young people at schools, young dynamic ambassadors, how do you find the balance between the enjoyment of sound of those young people and also making them aware that they have to protect their ears? How do you balance that in your activities, Laya?
Sometimes you have to be really direct with them. You have to tell them that they can enjoy the music, but they have to be careful. And if not, well, they will be welcome to our association in the future anyway. So that's a message that they really shocks them, and they say, okay, I will try to lower my music level so I'm happy to meet you, but I don't want to be part of you. So this is a way that you can relate to them and tell them that yes, it's important to enjoy your music, but not really to harm yourself, because most of them are used to think about, for example, healthy food, that they have to do sports, but they have never really thought about that hearing in a way can harm them. So this is just to put something else on the list that they can at least be aware. Most of that they will not really follow what we tell them, but some of them, or most of them, yes, they will.
Super, thank you. And I also have a question from Billy Jean asking, are there some requirements with figures and charts available to present this to representatives of public health insurances and maybe the policy makers? I guess, Shelley, you can answer that, because I think WHO created a great package of information that can be shared with those instances. Is that correct?
Yeah, Mark, I had a bit of a connection breakdown. Could you just repeat the first part of the question?
Yeah, it was a question if it's possible to really give charts and figures and numbers and requirements in a document to easily convert that to policymakers and to insurances and instances.
So I'm not sure that I understand the question fully. If the question is that how can we use the numbers and the data that is within the, let's say, documents like the World Report on Hearing and use them for advocacy, then I would say that the best way to do that is to have like for policymakers and also for other people who you want to take a quick decision, they would not like to read through, let's say, a longish document or even a 5-page document. So best is to give it on a sheet of paper, what the important messages you want to convey in a simple to understand way, very clearly, delineated. And that's why we have from WHO's side, like these 1 or 2-page infographics, which can simply be seen either by opening the document or just on their own, so that, or just as a 1-pager, so that all of the key facts, sometimes we have a lot of things to say and the message gets lost, but just the key fact and the key message, the key ask from that particular person is there at one glance in a very clear way, without a lot of cluttering, with a lot of diagrams perhaps. So I would say that, to my opinion, is the best way to convey it. But I don't know if I got the question right, Mark.
Yeah, it's also how I understood the question. Of course, I'm only reading it in the questions and answers. And I also see that Sue Archbold is part of the participants here. And I know that she is within the work group at the World Hearing Forum, looking into translating the World Report on Hearing in digestible parts and exactly achieve that goal that you're talking about. I think it's essential to narrow it to what needs to be done. The good thing about the World Report on Hearing, it has a huge package of information. It's rich, it's complete, it's very interesting. The bad thing about it, it's quite long, and policymakers typically don't take the time to read a long document. And that's why it needs to be converted to something digestible as such, right? Now, moving on to another topic is the topic of screening, hearing adult screening. And I think maybe I will first go to Patrick. Are you aware, Patrick, that there are any countries where adult screening is already implemented or starting up or starting to be implemented?
Mm-hmm. No, thanks a lot for your question, Mark. I think to my knowledge, on a national basis, there's no adult hearing screening in place in any country so far. I know that some countries have done some pilot studies, for example, like in the UK in the past, like the Action on Hearing Loss through phone screening and so on. But independent of whether we talk about high-income countries, middle or low-income countries, I think there's no programs in place yet, no.
Okay, thank you. Lydia, do you have more awareness of that? Because I know that EFHO is typically conducting a lot of these surveys among your members of what is happening on regulations and activities and hearing care. Are you aware of any regulations starting up?
Thank you for the question. Not as much. However, we are looking at, in general, at not only just raising awareness, as everybody else is speaking about, but we would like to see a coherent approach. So if we are trying to look for adult screening, for example, we need to have the solutions in place, because currently we are doing the research on hearing aids provision within the European Union. And from 2018 report, we have seen varied approach by the national health ministries to hearing solutions and hearing care for people who need it. And it really needs to be addressed, because it seems to be like a postcode or country kind of a lottery. Some people are really lucky to receive the support they need, and some people are really unlucky. And we believe that within the European Union, we should have a standard of hearing care across all the member states to ensure that everyone who needs support receives it.
Thank you, Lydia. And then it comes to regulation. So there's one question: if an employer is forcing their employees to listen to compressed sound for extended time, what about it then? Because if you look into what is already now in regulations in the workplace, there are a lot of like European other regulations in there. But I don't see that there's any regulation looking into how much people can be exposed to compressed sound during their work life. Is anybody aware of that? Do you have an idea of that, Shelley, that there are any regulations or limits in place on that specific point?
Indeed, that is not so to my knowledge, Mark. And the issue which was raised also right at the start by the Honorable MEP, I think it deserves much closer study and closer attention, so that of course we can develop a sort of a standard or a regulation or a basis for a regulation. But certainly even before that is done, given the urgency of this issue and the potential continuity of virtual platforms, which I think to a certain extent will stay on for a very, very long time, I think it is important to address that very quickly. And I hope that the European Parliament will really take the lead on doing that.
Super. Well, thank you so much, panel. And I think now we have to slowly round up. So I just learned that I have to do the conclusions instead of the MEP. Now, one of the most frequent questions I didn't tackle here is that, will the videos be available? Will the handouts be available? Interesting material. Thank you all. We will make sure of this. We are asking, of course, all the presenters here if they agree to share their handout, if they agree that their video can be shared. And I will then ask the organizers of this event, the platform, to inform everybody that has attended where they will be able to find all that information, the handouts and the videos. For sure, we will do that. Now, what I've heard today is a lot of times we need to act now, call for action. We can't stop, we can't do nothing. It started with, of course, the MEP saying that Europe needs to create more regulations for safe listening. Europe needs to go there. Happy to hear that from an MEP, and I hope that's where the European Parliament is there for, and the European Commission to help us create more regulations to promote safe listening. They have already stepped a long step, but it needs to be more. Great. Then Shelley started off by saying that 50% of young people are listening to music at unsafe levels, and we need to change their behavior, but we need to make it possible. We need to have tools. We need to make sure that if you are at the concert, you have a choice, because if it's only happening to you and you can't choose, that is not happening. So there's an urgent call on governments, private sector, and civil society to act for safe listening. Then we could talk about the global standard for safe listening venues and events. It's all about now getting more countries to really start with regulations. I think it's a wonderful piece of work, and it's very good that governments can fall back on that to create their own regulations, to make it mandatory and to follow up. But on the other hand, we need to change behavior. It's very important. It's not only just there. If you see that you have to make hearing protection available, yeah, that's one thing, but how can we make sure that young people are actually using the hearing protection and have good, safe listening habits? It's very important to be convincing in a kind way, in a gentle way, and make sure we don't frustrate them by making music something unpleasant. It needs to be a pleasant sound experience. Then Lydia stated very well that losing their hearing was seen by a lot of the adult people with who are hard of hearing as the biggest trauma in their life. And that is why it's so important for hard of hearing associations to promote safe listening. They know that a lot of hearing losses are preventable if we are taking care and do it safe. And then, of course, we saw Laya with her very good dynamics and showing very clearly that things can happen and can change. And if you do it in a fun way, a pleasant way, and if you start young, you can make a difference. And it's good to see that it's not only focusing with your association on cochlear implants as such, but also on making sure we change behavior so people don't need to do something about their hearing, but prevent hearing loss, which is great. And then I was very happy to see also that Patrick was making it clearly that there is a new, very good handbook of WHO, and that all adults from the age of 50, so 50, should be screened regularly for their hearing. And if they turn a little older, you should do it more frequently. Unfortunately, there are not too many countries or nobody so far doing it, so it's high time to do it now. And then we had Satish Mishra from the WHO office in Europe, stating that hearing care is cost effective. It has a return of investment of 60 to 1. That's maybe better than to put your money on a bank account. That doesn't bring you anything today. It's the best investment you can make, take care of your hearing. We need to be sure that people-centered ear and hearing care can be done. He also states there's an urgent call of action. We need to act now, and we need to make sure that things are happening. We can't permit us to act to do nothing. I think the cost of doing nothing is way too high. So I'd like to thank the whole panel, everybody attending, all the attendees. We're very happy that there were so many of you from around the globe. Please join us again. Please come and join the World Hearing Forum. Please come and join the Make Listening Safe LinkedIn group. Please come and join and visit us to be sure that we can work with all of you to make sure that we create a world where life it's a lot safer, definitely a safe listening experience, and have good habits. Thank you all the best. See you. Bye.